Hello, welcome back to the channel. And if you've been following this channel for a while, you'll know that in April I'll be getting Octopus to install a heat pump. But as you are probably aware, that heat pumps do not save you any money unless you either have a time of use tariff or you have a battery system. And the reason why they won't save you any money is because a heat pump is typically around 400% efficient, and the difference between the price of gas and the price of electricity is roughly 4 times. So you end up paying roughly the same whether you have a heat pump or a gas boiler. So I've been looking back at some of my gas data for the past year, well, until last April when I've started having my gas data, and looking at that and seeing what I should do to my current battery system, which will allow me to run my heat pump off cheap electricity overnight by using Octopus Intelligent Go tariff, which means that my nightly rate for electricity is 7p per kilowatt hour. Okay, before I go on, please make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you want to use my referral codes, please do, especially if you are thinking of getting your own heat pump with Octopus. When you make contact with them, or if you're already in the process of having them, quote this number which is on the bottom of the screen, and they'll give you £100 off. They will also give me £100. Okay, so I've got a 5 kilowatt hour pure drive battery at the moment, and that's fine for our day-to-day usage of our electricity, which is just running the house. There's a few days where we run out, but most days with the solar and load shift into the night for things like washing machine, dishwashers, we are fine. However, once we get a heat pump installed, that battery is going to drain very, very quickly, particularly in the winter months. So what I've got here is a graph of what my gas consumption is like month on month. So this is for heating the hot water, and also gas to the hob. And I should also say that I don't have the figures for February and March. So what I've done is I've said that March is probably going to be very close to November in terms of temperature. So I've just put my November figure in there, and my February is probably going to be close to January because they're both the coldest months. But the rest of the data is from the Octopus app. So as you can see that through the summer months of June, July and August, I use very little gas, less than 3 kilowatt hours per day. And then in May and September, admittedly last May was quite cold and so was September, so we had the heating on a bit earlier, which means we have some gas use there. And you can see then that in April, November, October, December, January and February, the winter months, we have our heating on. The house is normally heated to 19 degrees, and it's a 1935 semi-detached house in Swansea. It's a fairly large 3-bedroom. Okay, so if I add up all those figures, it means that we get a total gas consumption of 11,883 kilowatt hours. So for my calculations, I've assumed that my boiler, which is coming up to 8 years old, and I didn't service it last year because I knew I was going on the heat pump journey, is either 90% efficient or 80% efficient. Even the best modern boilers are only 90% efficient, and over time they degrade. So 80% efficient may not be a bad sort of guess, I suppose. And also, I don't know how much goes into heating the house, how much goes heating hot water, and how much gets used on cooking, but the amount used for heating hot water and cooking seems to be relatively low because we can look at those summer month values again. So that means that if my boiler was 90% efficient, out of that 11,883 kilowatt hours, only 10,695 are actually being used to heat. The rest are just wasted. This gets worse if my boiler was 80% efficient, which means we were only actually taking into the house 9,506. So that's effectively the amount of heat my house needs. So next up, if I was to assume, if I was to pay the gas price of about 6p per kilowatt hour, and I was buying all 11,883 kilowatt hours, that would cost me £713.01, excluding the standing charge. So that's just a number to bear in mind for later. Right, so now let's consider what's going on with the heat pump. So from Octopus, they've actually got the house consumption for heat and hot water as pretty close to what my yearly usage has been. So I've taken a bit of confidence in their modelling for that. But with a heat pump, we have something called the COP, which is basically how efficient it is. And heat pumps are over 100% efficient because they just move energy from one place to another. So the only energy use is actually from moving the energy rather than turning that energy from one form into another, which is where you get the losses from. So I've done two calculations here. One which is if the heat pump is 3.5 times efficient, and if it's 4 times efficient. So 4 will probably be the best we get. In my documents from Octopus in their planning phase, they are saying that the heat pump should be about 3.6 times efficient. So I've gone for 3.5 just to be on the conservative side. So if my boiler was 90% efficient, which is the best case scenario, and therefore I needed to put into the house that 10,695 kilowatt hours. If the heat pump was 3.5 times efficient, has a 3.5 times efficiency, that means that I would need the heat pump to put to intake 3,055 kilowatt hours of electricity. If it was 4 times efficient, that number would drop to 2,673 kilowatts of intake to give out that 10,700 of output. If my boiler was 80% efficient and I had that COP of 3.5, then to heat the house we would need to put in 2,716 kilowatt hours of electricity input to get that 9,500 out. And if the heat pump had a COP of 4, then we'd only need to put in 2,376 kilowatts of electricity. So if I was to do my calculations, so in the best case scenario, if I can run my heat pump purely off the 7p tariff at night, and the boiler was only 80% efficient, and the COP was 4, that means my annual heating bill for hot water and heating the house would be £166. The worst case scenario would be if the boiler was 90% efficient, the COP from the heat pump was only 3.5, and I was running the heat pump purely off the peak rate of electricity, which I've taken to be about 24p, then I would be paying £713 a year, which would actually be £20 more than what I'm paying at the moment for gas. So this is why it makes sense to run it off the batteries. Obviously I'll heat the hot water at night during the cheap period anyway. So the question is now, how much extra battery storage should I get? So as I say, I've currently got a 5 kilowatt hour Pure Drive battery. Pure Drive have merged with Duracell. I think they've basically been bought out by Duracell. So Duracell now make a battery that looks roughly the same as my Pure Drive one. And I think they're backwards compatible. So I've emailed Duracell to ask if they are backwards compatible. And Duracell make 2 5 kilowatt hour batteries that make the Dura 5 and the Dura Plus 5, or the Dura 5 Plus. The 5 Plus looks exactly the same as the one I've got at the moment. But that, without VAT, comes in at about £1,350 a unit, without fitting. The Dura 5 is £1,209 without VAT. So ideally I'd quite like to get those and then pay the fitting on top. What I've done is taken what I think is going to be the worst month, which is January in terms of temperature. And I've basically downloaded all my daily gas figures, which I put in a graph here. So bear in mind, this January we were away on the 1st and the 2nd, and we were coming back on the 3rd. So we were also away a couple of days before that. So the house was cold, so we were needing to bring it up. So that's why we used 128 kilowatt hours on the 23rd, just to bring the house back up to temperature. But it seems like a typical cold January day. It seems to come in at about 108 kilowatt hours of heating. Some of that, of course, will be hot water, some of it will be cooking, but probably not that much. So if I was to want to run my heat pump entirely off the batteries, how much battery would I need? So again, depending if the boiler is 80% efficient or 90% efficient, and whether the cup is 3.5 or 4, we get two values. So the worst case scenario, to output 108 kilowatt hours of heat in a day, the worst case scenario is that we would need to take in 28 kilowatt hours of electricity. The best case scenario on those days, so the most efficient heat pump and the least efficient boiler, would still mean we would have to have 22 kilowatt hours of electricity input. Of course, a few of those can go into the night, and if we are using the night, what we could do is set the heat pump to switch on, heat the house, say between 4 and half 5, and really ramp up the temperature downstairs in the house so it doesn't affect our sleep upstairs. So instead of having the house at 19 degrees, like heat it up to maybe 23 degrees or 22 degrees, and then just let it cool down slowly. So the heat pump won't be running as efficiently then, but it will be probably the cheapest form to run. So that means that we'll probably need an extra 20 kilowatt hours of battery storage in the best case scenario. However, for most days we probably won't need that much, and also we've got limited space and also in terms of budget. So what I'm thinking is that we'll probably get 3 more 5 kilowatt hour batteries, which will take our total capacity up to 20, but because of the pure drive system means that you shouldn't charge a battery below 10%, it will actually mean we'll have about 18 kilowatt hours of energy storage. We currently use about 4.5 on the worst days, so that will mean we'll have about 13.5 kilowatt hours that we can use to run the heat pump. And that's not including any charging we'll get from our solar panels as well. So I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to get 3 more batteries. Hopefully that will cost about the £3,600 mark, plus probably a couple of £100 of an electrician's time to come and install them. But that's been what my thinking is so far, and then over the summer we'll have excess battery storage which we can then discharge back to the grid and make some money there as well and do some energy trading on that point of view. But again, for looking at these numbers for cost savings, probably we will save about £300 to £400 a year just on the import of gas. Add that to the savings we'll make on the standing charge, which is roughly another £100. It means that our heat pump will pay back between £400 and £500 a year. And if you've watched my previous video, which I'll link up here, my heat pump is probably going to cost about £600, so it should pay back in 2 years' time. Anyway, thank you for watching the video. Hope that made sense and my logic makes sense as well. And I'll see you in another video very soon.